Hello everybody! It's officially April, which means it's the month of the Savior's Champion's book birthday. A few years ago this month, I released the first book of the Savior series into the world. Since then, it has hit #1 on multiple Amazon and Audible bestseller lists, and it was voted one of the best books of all time by Book Depository. I still cannot believe how much you guys have rallied around Tobias and Layla's story. It means so much to me. I am so honored by your support, and I can't wait to release the third book in the series, The Savior's Army. In honor of this very special month, I am breaking down my 10 best tips for writing fantasy romance. The Savior series is a dark fantasy romance series. Fantasy romance is one of my favorite multi-genres, and I have so many tips to share with you. I also have some super exciting news that may involve a contest. Maybe some prizes. There's good shit coming your way, and you're gonna want to know about it. Let's get into it. Before we get started, thank you so much to everyone who bought goodies from my merch store. For the entire month of March, 100% of my profits from my merch store went directly to United Help Ukraine. And thanks to your support, we raised a ton of money. I am honestly so proud and honored that so many of you got involved, and I hope you like your writerly merch, and I hope you know that your purchase went toward a great cause. Additionally, in case you missed it, the Savior's Champion is on sale right now for just 99 cents. This sale is open internationally, it's available across multiple platforms, but it's only available for a limited time. So if you haven't read my best-selling dark fantasy romance novel, now is the time to do it. Pick it up while it's cheap. I've got it listed below. And now for some exciting news. For the entire month of April, I will be hosting the Savior series fan art contest. You probably already know that the main character of the Savior's Champion, Tobias, is an artist. So what better way to celebrate TSC's book birthday than via art? You have 1 month to whip up fan art for the Savior series. This could be character art, it could be different scenes from either the Savior's Champion or the Savior's sister, it could be headcanons, it could even be aesthetics or photo manipulation, it could be memes. You can enter as many times as you want, there are 0 limitations, and this contest is available internationally. If you want to submit 1 piece of art or 10, it's totally fine, and this is not about creating the best, most perfect piece of art. This is about having fun and getting creative. 3 winners will be walking away with massive TSC themed prize packages. We're talking signed copies of the Savior's Champion and the Savior's Sister. We're talking TSC themed merch, as well as some exclusive merch that is not yet available in my merch store, so you will be getting it first. I have the entry form in the description below. It has all the details available, so get to drawing or photoshopping or whatever else. Get to work. I cannot wait to see what you whip up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays, and if you want to be alerted as soon as I upload, ring that bell. You definitely want to be alerted. I mean, we host contests here. It's awesome. And now I am breaking down my 10 best tips for writing fantasy romance so that you can whip up a wonderful fantasy world and add some fancy dancy romance into the mix. Number 1, understand the genre, or in this case, genres. Before you start writing a fantasy romance, you need to understand the genres you're working with. Fantasy romance refers to a multi-genre book, which basically means that your central plot is half fantasy, half romance. Fantasy is a very broad genre of speculative fiction that involves magic or adventure or both. It's usually set in a world different from our own, but if it is set in our world, it's modified with fantastical or magical elements. Romance is a genre where the main plot revolves around the romantic relationship between your main characters, not the supporting cast, the MCs. What separates romance from other plots revolving around romantic relationships is that a romance has to end in a happily ever after or happy for now. This basically means that by the end of the story, the lovebirds need to be together and they need to be happy. If you're writing a fantasy romance, your central plot needs to combine these 2 elements. Your story is about your main characters falling in love and living happily ever after while existing in a fantasy world or dealing with adventure or dealing with magic. Number 2, fantasy romance is not the same thing as fantasy with a romantic subplot. But Jenna, how do I tell the difference between a fantasy romance and fantasy with a romantic subplot? That's obviously what I'm about to talk about. Come on. Imagine the book with the romance removed. Can the story still be told? If yes, it's a romantic subplot. Let's take a look at my favorite read of 2021, Ashes by Iona Wayland. Ashes is a dark fantasy novel that revolves around Angela, a woman whose brother has died tragically. Angela learns that her brother's soul is in turmoil, and in order to bring it to rest, she needs to travel through the magical and deadly Hollow Forest and sprinkle his ashes in the appropriate place. Along the way, Angela develops a romantic bond with her guide through the Hollow Forest. If I were to remove the romance from Ashes, sure, it might be less entertaining, but the plot could still 100% work. Because ultimately, it's about Angela's quest to free her brother's soul. That's how we know that Ashes is a fantasy with a romantic subplot. Number 3, a fantasy romance can't exist without the romance. Unlike a story with a romantic subplot, if you remove the romance from a fantasy romance, it completely falls apart. Let's take a look at my novel, The Savior's Champion, which follows Tobias as he enters a magical and deadly tournament. If Tobias survives the tournament, he's going to be married off to a woman he doesn't love, which is extra shitty because he's falling deeply in love with someone else. Is Tobias doomed to either die in the tournament or marry someone he doesn't love? Or can he find a way to survive the tournament and be with the woman he truly adores? As you can see, if we were to remove the romance from the story, it wouldn't work. The story is about Tobias's romantic relationship. Without it, it becomes a completely different plot. This is how you can tell The Savior's Champion is a fantasy romance. If the romantic storyline is central to your main plot, then congratulations, you've written a fantasy romance as well. Number 4, you're not the exception. But Jenna, my fantasy romance doesn't end with a happily ever after. It ends tragically, cause I'm a rebel. You're not a rebel, you're just a dumbass who doesn't understand their own genre. Romance is not the only genre that features a romantic relationship as its central plot. A romantic relationship can be the central plot of many genres, including dramas, tragedies, and of course, love stories. What separates romance from these genres is they're designed to be uplifting at the end, which means you absolutely have to have a happily ever after or a happy for now. If your character's romantic relationship ends tragically, then it's likely you've either written a drama or a tragedy, or maybe even a thriller. If it ends with one of the characters dying, or they grow apart, but gosh darn it, they learned some valuable lessons along the way, then you've probably written a love story. But again, and I cannot stress this enough, it's not a romance. This is not gatekeeping or thought policing. It's literally the definition of the genre. A romance without a happily ever after makes about as much sense as sci-fi without science or futurism, or a ghost story without ghosts. And yes, this applies to fantasy romance as well. Just because it's multi-genre doesn't mean you're off the hook. Which brings us to number 5. Know the difference. As we already covered, fantasy is a broad genre with a zillion subgenres like epic fantasy, contemporary fantasy, and my favorite, dark fantasy. Each subgenre has its own expectations, and multi-genres are the same deal. Because of this, you can't write a fantasy romance in the exact same way as you'd write straight fantasy or straight romance. Let's start with how it differs from fantasy. A lot of fantasy subgenres, especially epic fantasy and high fantasy, are very plot focused with a heavy reliance on world building. All fantasy is going to have some plot focus, seeing as we're dealing with magic and adventure, but fantasy romance also needs to have a heavy reliance on being character driven, since we are following the romantic bond between two or more people. Additionally, most fantasy is going to require world building, but if you are spending hundreds of pages describing the trees and the economy and the politics in your fantasy romance, readers are gonna get pissed. They're here for the love and the face sucking. Give them enough of the world to set the scene and move on. On the flip side, the difference between fantasy romance and straight up romance is, well, the fantasy. If you're writing a contemporary setting with contemporary resources and contemporary problems, that's fine, but it's not a fantasy. You have to weave the fantastical elements into the romance, otherwise readers are gonna feel bamboozled. Which brings us to number 6, weave them together. It's not a fantasy romance unless you have an equal balance of both. Fantasy presents itself in at least one of 4 ways: a fantasy world, fantasy characters, magic, or adventure. The way to weave fantasy with your romance is to combine one or more of these elements into your romance. Let's start with the fantasy world. This could be as easy as a prince and a princess from dueling kingdoms being forced into an arranged marriage. They don't like each other at first, but eventually sparks fly. Next, there's fantasy characters. This could be as simple as one of your characters being an elf and the other one being a wizard. Next, we have magic. Maybe one character has magic and the other doesn't. This creates a rift between them that they have to battle together. Or maybe some kind of magic separates the lovers, like a curse or an omen. Lastly, we have adventure. This could be a hero battling grave dangers to save their love, or it could be 2 or more lovers escaping grave dangers so they can be together. These are just a few very simplistic examples of how to combine these genres into a cohesive unit. I'm sure you can think of some amazing alternatives. Number 7, the genre balancing act. But Jenna, how am I supposed to make sure the fantasy and romance in my story are equal? Okay, so it's not as deep as that. Your plot needs to be roughly half romance, half fantasy. However, if this answer isn't sufficient for you, look at your story on a chapter-by-chapter basis. Was one chapter focused on adventure, magic, or a fantasy world? In that case, we'll label it a fantasy chapter. Was another chapter mostly focused on blossoming love? If that's the case, we'll label it a romance chapter. Was it an equal helping of both? Then we'll say it's half and half. Go through all your chapters and see how many cumulatively are fantasy and how many are romance. While the results don't have to be 50-50, it should be close enough. Number 8, intimacy is a progression. If you're not used to adding romance to fantasy, think of it as a step-by-step progression. Show how intimacy progresses between your characters. This does not have to be sexual. It could be hands brushing against one another that evolves into hand holding, that evolves into an embrace, that evolves into a first kiss. Readers read romance for this progression, so don't go straight to the big bang from the get-go. Give readers every step of the evolution. This will draw out the suspense and get them asking, will they or won't they? Additionally, be sure to tease the intimacy. This can be done through the characters maybe sorta about to hold hands, but then someone walks into the room and they dart away. And of course, we've all read the kiss fake out. You think the characters are finally gonna lock lips, but then something happens and no dice. Readers eat this shit up. I've got an entire playlist on my channel devoted to writing romance, so if you're not sure how to add romance to your fantasy, definitely check that playlist out, but consider this your pivotal first step. Number 9, study the tropes. Romance features some of the most popular tropes in fiction, and lucky for you, a lot of them fit seamlessly into fantasy. The most obvious one is enemies to lovers. This fits so well into fantasy because your characters could be from rivaling kingdoms or rivaling fantasy races. You could also utilize the opposites attract trope or the wrong side of the tracks trope in a very similar fashion. The next obvious choice is the royal marriage trope, particularly the arranged marriage or the marriage of convenience. These sorts of relationships are extremely common among royalty, so it's really easy to fit this into your fantasy setting if you have royal characters. And lastly, we have my favorite trope, the forbidden romance, which is when characters are deeply in love, but they're not allowed to be together for whatever reason. This is so easy to fit into your fantasy setting for the same reason as the enemies to lovers trope. The characters could be from rivaling kingdoms or races, and thus they are not expected to be together. Going back to the arranged marriage trope, one character could be promised to someone, but they are in love with someone else. There are way more tropes you can utilize. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, so do your research and make sure you're utilizing the tropes that work best for you. And number 10, don't fuck it up. There are certain trends in fantasy romance that are really popular and really shitty. What do you think, Butters? Do you like them?
I don't like them at all.
Butters knows what's up. It may be tempting to fall into these trends because you see other authors doing it, but as someone who sells a whole lot of fantasy romance books, I'm telling you, It's not necessary. The first trend to avoid is the unhealthy power imbalance. That's not to say you can't write a character with a lot of power. That's really common in fantasy. Maybe they're magical or they're royal. That's totally fine. But things get problematic when one character has a lot of power over their love interest. For example, they're using magic to control their partner, or they literally own their partner as a slave. Please don't do this. It eliminates the concept of consent, and we don't like this shit. But the most obvious problematic trend in fantasy romance is romanticized abuse, particularly romanticized sexual abuse. One character forces themselves onto another or threatens to hurt them or actually physically harms them, and this is portrayed as sexy and powerful and desirable. You can write powerful characters without making them sex offenders, and you can write enemies to lovers without resorting to physical abuse. You are a competent creative writer. I have every confidence that you can tell an amazing story without all that crap. So that's all I got for you today. Don't forget the Savior Series fan art contest is going down right now. 3 lucky winners are going to be walking away with huge TSC themed prize packages, including exclusive merch that's not available anywhere else. I have all the details to the contest linked below. Definitely check it out. Get on it. I cannot wait to see what you whip up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays, and if you want to be alerted as soon as I upload, ring that bell. The Savior's Champion is on sale right now for just 99 cents. So if you haven't checked out my #1 best-selling dark fantasy romance yet, what are you waiting for? Get on it now. It's linked below. You'll love it. And be sure to follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Tumblr, Facebook, and BookBub. And of course, you can tweet me at Jenna Moreci. Bye!
It's Stealthy. Get off your lazy bum and subscribe to Jenna's channel. Ring the bell while you're at it. I know you were thinking about it already. I see it in your eyes. Come on, live a little. Subscribe.